thing. So last week, we asked a lot of questions, but the main question that we asked was, what are we doing to cause people to follow Jesus? That was the one question, the main question that we looked at. And we looked at the first calling of the students of Jesus, of the disciples. We learned that these guys were vigorous students even from the beginning. Even though they didn't make the cut in their schooling, they were still vigorous students because of the expectation of the place that they lived in Bethsaida, which was a place that was very strict in their understanding of Scripture. And a portion of those guys came from Bethsaida, so that's where we kind of find them. We also looked at how Jesus fulfilled the dream of Jacob. Remember when he had a dream, and he was laying on a stone, and he had a dream where the ladder came open, and angels were ascending and descending. Jacob had that dream a long time before, but Jesus brings it up again, and we see a fulfillment of something going on. That's huge. We also looked that Jesus looked into the future a little bit and saw somebody by the name of Nathaniel. And we're going to kind of pick up there because we're not going to read that, but I need you to know where we're heading. What I want to do is, I don't know how many of y'all play golf or like to watch golf. I love golf. It's a great thing to nap through. And it's not so quiet, and it's great. But, golf has evolved, hasn't it, over the years. It used to be, just a wooden, wooden club, and it was really small, and the tees were really small. And then as technology has increased, it's changed over. Now you've got these larger head drivers, you've got made out of different metals, and you can adjust them so you don't have to be as good as you used to be and still enjoy the game. But the main thing is, and everybody knows when you start off, what you got to do. The first thing you do on a hole is you tee it up. Right? You put your tee in the ground and you set it off, and you sit back and you take your swing. But the ball's got to be teed up just right. If you're using an overhead size club and you tee it too low, you're going to top the ball. If you're using a smaller head club and you tee it up too high, you're going to cut it and you're going to go way underneath it. So you got to do it just right. And I think this next story is Jesus teeing it up. And it had to be just right. It had to be just perfect. It couldn't have just been like any other thing, because he was getting ready to take that and he was going to drive that ball of the message that he had, his plan, his mission. He was going to drive it home. And it's funny because I've never looked at it this way, but I'm really looking at it through the eyes of Nathaniel. Remember, Nathaniel, he was the one that said, what good can come out of Nazareth, right? He's the one who was like, whatever. But then Jesus says, well, there's a how do you put it? There's an Israelite without any deceit in him. And he kind of, I can see Nathaniel picking up and going, you got that right, Jesus speaking to his ego a little bit, but he says, you were sitting under a tree. And he hadn't met him yet. And Nathaniel just goes, oh man, you must be the Son of God because you saw, into the future, you saw me sitting under this tree. And Jesus shakes his head and goes, what greater things are you going to see? And he brings up the dream. He brings up the dream of Jacob. But this time he changes it. Instead of a ladder going up and down, he says, and the angels are ascending and descending, it says in this passage, on the Son of Man, on Jesus himself. And we talked about how that was in Bethel, and that was all about temple and tabernacle. Because this was the thing, what it taught was where God's presence is where you worship. God is there. When he is there, it's a place to worship. And so here he is, he's talking to Nathaniel. He sees this, they go away, and the next thing you know, we have the first sign. It says in my scripture, the first sign. We call it a miracle. But really what I want you to know is it's actually the first intersection that we see. You see, all about the book of John, you're going to see intersections. Intersections where heaven, the presence of God, comes down to earth, God's creation, and they intersect. And I want you to know when that happens, mighty things take place. And at an intersection today, we have signs, don't we? We have stop signs, we have names of the streets, we have all these things that we look. Well, there's a sign coming, and I love the writer because he gives us like 5 signs. He says, this is the first sign, this is the second sign, this is the third sign. But after a while, he stops. Why? Because I think the writer's thinking, can you get it? Can you start looking for the signs yourself? Can you see where heaven is going to collide with earth? And when that happens, there's some just amazing things that take place. One of these things is, and we could go before this, one of the intersections is when Jesus came to earth as a baby, amen? Where heaven came down. We talked about that. Beautiful, right? And we sit there and we go through that. We can see that there's stories of Jesus in his childhood and all this stuff. But then there's stories of the disciples. And it's very interesting because remember the question that he asked, well, what are you looking for? And that was a strange question because every male at that time was looking for Messiah in the Jewish culture. That's what you were taught to do. Look for Messiah. So he asked that question. But I wonder if he was asking it in kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit. Because what I'm noticing is that, yeah, here was these guys. They were doing their thing. They were following John the Baptist. They were looking for. They were trying to find where Messiah was going to come from. But it took Messiah finding them. One of the intersections in your life is that Jesus comes and he looks for you. That's powerful. I mean, that is a game changer, in my opinion. That my Savior, my God, is looking for me. Man, that does a lot of things. That's the intersection of my life because that automatically gives me worth. That automatically gives me purpose. I mean, in this intersection, I'm finding that God's presence, His heaven, God's presence in my life is saying, I am looking for you. He was looking for Nathanael before Nathanael even knew him. Right? So then we're going to pick up in 2. It says, on the 3rd day, a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Why is that important? Guess what? Nathanael's not from Bethsaida. He's from this town. So we can't forget what just happened. Because I believe Jesus teed up the story for Nathanael. He says, you know what? We're going to your hometown. And there's a wedding going on in your hometown. Well, Nathanael probably knew that he was invited. Because the villages were family residents. I mean, everybody in that, well, I don't know, it's kind of like our church. It seems like everybody's related to somebody. Right? But really, in all actuality, that's what it was. The villages were family units. So this was a big deal. And not only that, probably the villages around it. Because I'm sure one daughter married somebody else from another village. And so this was a big deal. It says Jesus' mother, Mary, was there. So obviously Jesus knew, right? Jesus knew the family that was getting married because mom was there. All right? And so it says, so Mary was there and Jesus and the disciples were there and invited to the wedding as well. Then the wine ran out and Jesus' mother told him, they don't have any wine. Now we got to stop there for a second. Because I think we need to understand the Jewish wedding here for just a little bit. The wedding was 7 days long. 7 days. I can barely handle 2-hour wedding. I mean, my privilege is that, man, I can get the ceremony done in 5 minutes. We're good to go. Get on with the cake. Yeah, someone could clap that up. I know. You know? And this is 7 days. And it's just not just a show up and come as you go, man. This is 7 days of feasting. This is 7 days of drinking. Not grape juice, wine. So it says that he went out and they ran out. And here is Mary, which I find it interesting because Mary is looking at what is going to happen because they ran out. That's an embarrassment. And it's not only an embarrassment. In Jewish custom, there is what they call hospitality laws. It was a grievous error to run out of wine and food for your guests. It would take years to live that down. I mean, the groom already has a black mark on his name. I mean, it's not, you think it just sounds funny, but no, I mean, it was real. And that goes back to there always being enough in the house of God. Because if they're following God, I mean, how many times, we're going to see Jesus multiply one little lunch to feed 5,000 later on. Right? There's always, if God is present, because we are allowing Him in our hearts, we are allowing this intersection to take place, God will provide. Now, He's not going to provide like you think He is. There's not a Big Mac in every pot, okay? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that God will provide some way. I don't know how many times my wife and I have had, we've been in ministry for quite a while now, and before the Lighthouse I was a youth pastor, and we had a 24-hour open door policy. I don't advise that. But any one of our youth could come at our house 24 hours a day, no questions asked. If it was late at night and they had been partying or whatever, if they'd been to a wedding for 7 days and they need a place to crash, there's no questions, you can come crash. But in the morning, at about 7:30, when I get up, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to figure out what's going on. We're going to make it right. But I don't remember how many times we were like, what are we having for dinner? Marcy and I, those days, little kids were like, there's like a couple pieces of chicken in the crock pot and some broth, and we're good to go. And next thing I know, I've got 10 teens show up. I don't know how many times, Tracy can account to this, I don't know how many times our pot never ran out. And I'm sitting there going, it should have. Teens eat a lot. And so it's just all those things where God provides. And He's going to provide in different ways. But the key is that we allow this intersection to happen in our life. And I'm wondering, maybe I need to stop here and ask a question. Are we willing to allow the intersections to come into our lives? Or are we like, when we see it come down, we're like, I don't want any part of that, I'm going to take the detour. Because usually when in my life, when the intersection happens in my life, it causes me to stop and change something about me. So they're at the wedding. They ran out of wine. Mary goes to Jesus and says, man, they're out of wine. Now, I preached on this before when I went through the miracles of Jesus, and I said the miracle was not necessarily the water turning into wine. What the miracle was is that Mary trusted her son enough to take care of it, even after he responds. Now, moms, I want you to see if you would appreciate the way Jesus responds to Mary. Just tell me, just tell me what you think. In verse 4, Jesus says, what concern of yours you have with me? Or what has this concern of yours do with me? Jesus asked. My time has not come yet. If I said that to my mama, I'd be picking myself up across the street. There we go. I mean, when we read it from that standpoint, we're like, whoa! Jesus had a smart mouth to his mama. But here's the thing. He wasn't being smart. Because what he was saying is like, look, what is the concern that they ran out? Either they didn't plan properly, or they overconsumed. That's not Jesus' problem. You know what? I think Jesus can say that a lot about us today. You haven't planned out right, or you've overconsumed. What is this, my concern? Now Mary, instead of slapping Jesus, because I'm pretty sure that's wrong, instead of doing that, she turns to the people around them and says, just do whatever he says. And I'm sure it was like that. I can't believe he talked to me that way, but you better do what he says. And she says Jesus is going to take care of it. Why? Because a mama knows her boy. A mama knows the passion. Obviously, this was a close member of the family, or this was a cousin or something, and Jesus didn't want the disgrace for the family. And so he looks, and the mom says, just do whatever, and he told the servants. Then it says in 6, now 6 stone jars were there, set there for Jewish purification, each containing 20 to 30 gallons. Some of your Bibles will say 2 to 3 measures. 6 jars that held about 30 gallons of wine. That is some wine. That is a lot. But notice that it said it was set aside for the purification. What does this tell us? If we just skim over this, we're going to lose the story. And if we lose this story, there is no way we're going to understand the cleansing of the temple. Because I'm going to tell you, they go hand in hand. So what happens is, these stone jars are sitting there for Jewish purification. If you want to know what that's about, you can have a great read and read Leviticus, and it'll tell you all about the purification. Because I'm going to tell you this. The Jewish religion at that time, and the way God set it up, was all about purification. Think about it. Once a year, the nation was what? purified because of the blood shed. You would go, as your family, you'd make a sacrifice. What would that do? That would purify you for the next year, depending on what sacrifice and what offering or whatever that you were in the middle of doing. It was all about purification. To make us right with God. That can only happen. Jesus says there can be no forgiveness without the shedding of blood. That was for purification. Don't, in the Christian church, that his blood makes us white as snow. Right? That's purification. Jesus, though, looked at it, and when you look at it, we know that they were in a synagogue, obviously, the town center. Because these were there. This is what it was for. You have church at the synagogue. So they're sitting in the synagogue, and he sees these things. Not only are they a great vessel for holding a ton of wine, but there's another meaning behind this. Leviticus 13 and 14 talks a lot about the purification of disease. Now, I'm going to say this very carefully in our culture, because we say everything's a disease, because if it's a disease, then I'm not responsible for it. Amen? Okay? But we do have a disease. It's called sin. We were born with it. All have fallen short of the glory of God. There is none of us that here is without sin. Zero. And our society teaches the opposite. That says, no, you're just basically good. Well, man, if we start on that precedent, then we don't need Jesus to begin with. But we have a disease and we need some purification, right? Okay, so you can read that, you can talk about that. But Jesus here, and we say there's 6, which I thought was interesting, because 6 jars, man, 6 in the Bible, that number, that's not a good number. 6 is not good. So I looked and I go, why is there 6? Then I saw the 7th. Hang on to that note, and I'll get back to it later in the sermon. There's a 7th jar. You see, what we've got to understand is that we are not under the laws of purification. In other words, I don't have to wash before sacrifice. I don't have to, before I have forgiveness, I don't have to go through a ritual washing. I don't have to do any of that. Why? Is it because we're purified anymore? No, I'm going to contest that we are not under purification law. Jesus came to fulfill the law, so it's not purification anymore, it's transformation. So Jesus saw these things that were used for purification, and he said, fill them up with water. Now, when you look at the Greek word, or the Aramaic word, if you go that far, you're going to find out that it just didn't mean fill, it means make them overflow. You ever see a jar overflow? That it even sticks above the jar a little bit, right? I mean, there's that much in there. He goes, I want you to fill them up. And it's interesting, because in the Old Testament, God, or the Spirit of God, is always seen as water. Right? It's always about water. As a matter of fact, in the New Testament, we can see the Spirit as water. We're a fountain of living water. Right? But in the New Testament, there's also another understanding, is that the Spirit's also used in context with when we look at wine. Don't put old wine in new wineskins. In other words, if you're going to bow your knee to Jesus, it better have a transforming power, because if you just do what you did before, what's the point? Right? So we have this thing. So Jesus says, I want you to go ahead and fill those things up to the top. Overflow it. That just makes me think of Jesus' teaching. I have come to give you life and give it abundantly. Not the life that you were used to, but the life that I want to transform. That's what comes abundantly. And so now we have this, it automatically, I don't know how, I didn't know if he said abracadabra, I don't know if there was a puff of smoke, I don't know if he had a curtain that went around it, I do not know what the deal was. But all I know is he said, okay, now you take that to the head servant. Now, there were servants all around watching this going, I'm going to take water to the head servant and tell him that it's wine. Okay. But Mary said, do what he says. Mary must have had some clout. Well, she should have. Right? Jesus was her boy. And so all of a sudden, he takes this now smaller, put in a smaller glass of wine, a goblet, and takes it to the head waiter. The head service guy takes a drink of it, which was the custom to make sure, and he's floored. Completely floored. And he goes on to say, and it's right there, verse 9, when the chief servant tasted the water, after it had been turned to wine. He did not know where it came from. In other words, he'd been in the kitchen. He knew what was happening. He saw. But now he went out to do whatever, and now these servants bring him, hey, we found some wine. He's like, where did this come from? He didn't know where it came from. But it says, but the others, but though the servants who drawn the water knew, and it says he called the groom. He calls the groom and he says, you have done what nobody does. Isn't that like our Jesus? It says, you've done what nobody does. You have saved the best for last. Because normally what you would do is you get the good wine first, right? You get them sauced enough so you don't know you're feeding them wine coolers. That's probably the Message Bible. Look it up. You know, that's really what you did. I mean, you put the expensive stuff out first, and then when everybody really didn't care, you put out the other stuff. Because you've done this in reverse. You have done this in reverse. And he's floored by it. Well, there's a couple things in this passage that just excites me. First of all, the guy in charge didn't know where it came from, but the lowly servants did. Isn't that Jesus? The first will be last, and the last will be first. That's what he does. That's what he's done for me. He's taken a low-down, dirty sinner, and he has transformed my life into something that I could not even dream possible. You know, we got another prop down here. We used the thing, but you guys remember these? These, if you don't remember, I'm going to bring up some painful memories for those of you who went to the marriage retreat. When they came to the marriage retreat and they checked in, they each had a brick. They were given a brick in a bag. Some of them already had other bricks in it. But they were to write something. This one says addiction on it. They were to write something that they're carrying with them into their marriage. This is the baggage that comes into the marriage. Right? And we had people get it, but we had rules. Like, you can't steal someone, give someone else your brick, and if you this, you got an extra brick because obviously you weren't following the rules. So you need another brick, a rule breaker, or whatever. Okay? Good thing I didn't play it, or I would have had all the bricks. But anyway, so we had all this, and we had those there, and it was a reminder of how heavy the things is that we carry in the life. Well, I want you to just imagine that for just a second yourself, because we've all carried something in. We've come to an intersection, and we're full of baggage. We've come to an intersection with Jesus in our life, and we're full of baggage. Did he not take that burden from me, you? Do you remember that day when he took the burden from you? Wasn't that a great day? Obviously, wasn't that great? Wasn't that a great day? There we go. So if we can't get excited about an intersection when we show up where Jesus does something for us, how are we going to get excited about an intersection that we come to where we face persecution? And I think we're supposed to be excited about it. Why? Because it's just another opportunity for me to follow Jesus and be like him. It's just another opportunity for God to be there, heaven, collide with earth. It's another opportunity. And so we had all these things, but I remember the day that I remember it. I remember it. And it wasn't when I first got saved, by the way. If someone has told you that all you got to do is bow your knee to Jesus and it's all good, man, come talk to me. Because that's not how it works. Sometimes it is, but when I bowed my knee to Jesus, yeah, I became his son, and then it began a process in which he began to unload me brick by brick, but he's still unloading bricks, by the way, guys. But it's getting lighter and lighter. Each intersection I get at, there's another light. Each time I see a sign, well, here it is. He's sitting here. Let's go back to Nathanael real quick. He is in his hometown. Jesus just said greater things you're going to see. He says, because why? Angels are going to ascend. In other words, heaven and earth are going to collide over and over again. Over and over again. And it's going to happen because of me. It says, on the Son of Man. Right? So Nathanael's sitting there. What good could come out of Nazareth? And all of a sudden, he is seeing a transformation of water into wine. He is seeing the fact that my family was going to be disgraced. But God showed up through His Son Jesus, through the Messiah, and made something ugly and shameful into something beautiful. Do you think that miracle was not for Nathaniel? To say, Nathaniel, look at me. I'm going to transform you into something. Because guess what? Jesus is the seventh jar. His blood was poured out overflowing so I can have forgiveness of sin. If we're talking purification, if we're talking all this stuff, then Jesus has to be the seventh jar. I believe Nathaniel got it. I really do. Because that was a miracle in his hometown. I believe that was for him. It's also for us to see that God wants to transform us. I entitled this message, Intersection, Signs, and Joy. Because I believe, I said it's time to celebrate when we come to an intersection, no matter what it looks like. I believe when heaven collides with earth, there is nothing, there's only one option to have if we accept it the way it is, and that's joy. Now that's the problem, though. We don't accept it for the way it is. When we see a brick, we see it as a brick, a heavy thing that we have to carry around. We forget parts of Scripture that says, hey, there's a scripture that we misuse all the time. It says God won't give us anything more than we can handle. That's a bold-faced lie that the church is giving us. Because with Jesus, all things are possible. That means I can handle it all. That means it guarantees me that I'm going to have something that I can't handle, but when I collide with Jesus, I can handle it all. Amen. Do you see how that little change messes us all up? Because now we're thinking, oh, I've got more than I can handle. That means Jesus isn't with me. No, Jesus is right there saying, I want to transform you into obedience. I want to transform you into trust. I want to transform you into something that you are not and are not capable to be on your own. I want to go back to the story. Because where's the joy found in this story? Well, man, those who were at the party got how many gallons more wine? All right? I mean, we can look at it that way. But the other thing I want to look at is some things I don't know if we've even considered in this story. The joy that we can find is first we see it in the wedding itself and at the wedding. We have the best saved for last. I always wondered why my wife ate her pizza backwards. Crust first. Crust here, point over here. That seems wrong to me. I don't know why, it just seemed weird. But she always said, I want to save the best bite for last. What's that little corner piece, I guess? You know, which is true, because a lot of people don't eat their crust. You know. You know. But I want you to know that Jesus is saving the best for last for you. Maybe that doesn't seem encouraging to you. It sure does to me. Because the more I walk in this world, the more I see what's going down all over the world, what I see going on in the church, there's got to be better. And it's Jesus. Matter of fact, I can flip through the Bible and I find out that my Jesus is coming again. And He is going to set up a kingdom here on earth. A righteous kingdom that will have no end. The best for last. I don't know about you, but I get joyful when I think about that. What's another thing? Public humiliation in the wedding, taken care of. Instead of humiliation, it was transformed into I don't even know the word, but now the groom gets to say, yeah, I saved the best for last. I mean, the credit could, I mean, gee, that's how my God works. He says, look, here you go. I've taken it for you. It's better than you could have done it yourself. I wonder is if that started a new trend in the villages around there to save the best for last. What honor. What joy. How about this? Just the provision for the wine. It was free, y'all. It was water. That's wine. Best, good wine. And I sit there and I go, there's no cost. Well, think about this. Best for last. We've got Jesus coming, ruling and reigning. Public community. We are redeemed from our sin and shame, and we are called sons and daughters of the Most High. Not only that, we have provision. Jesus paid it all for me. No cost to me. All I have to do is accept His gracious work on the cross, and in it I am redeemed, paid for, bought, sealed, signed, delivered. I'm spending the rest of the time in eternity with Jesus. Man, that's some joy. What about the relationship between the head servant and the groom? We think about that. The head servant now saying, my master is wise. And the respect that came place because of something that Jesus did. Now, we don't know this. Maybe there was a rift. Can you imagine real quick, and all of a sudden now you have this greater respect because you got to see something? And the groom, only the lowly servants knew what really happened. So there's those joy. What about the joy of the disciples? Yeah, this had to be joyous for them. Because here is Jesus demonstrating who He is. Now, I know the disciples didn't get it. I know they were looking for a military ruler that would overthrow the Romans. Sadly enough, we've got Christians that are the same way today, especially here in the United States. We want Messiah to come again, but we want Him to come again for one reason, that's to take Washington out. And guess what? We're making the same mistake we used it, because that is not how Jesus was.
Amen.
He came to give joy, peace, mercy, grace. He didn't come to change government. He came to transform government. Amen. Totally different thing. Jesus never asked for His disciples to overthrow anything. But what He asked was to give up everything and follow Jesus. Says there at the end, in verse 11, Jesus performed this first sign in Cana of Galilee. He displayed His glory, and His disciples believed in Him. And then after this, He went down to Capernaum together with His mother, His brothers, and His disciples, and they stayed there only for a few days. You see, here we have this understanding. I want to tell you this. At those intersections of life, there is joy. Because where the presence of God is, there is joy. They went, His glory was there. I've asked you this question, what are you doing in your life that makes people want to follow Jesus? I think a lot of us do things so people will follow us. I don't want people to follow me. I am not good with directions. And I think rules were meant to be broken. I'm being really honest. Right? See, God knew that I needed my wife, who has got she's got some kind of gyroscope compass thing working on her brain, driving me nuts. It's been around 12 times and told her where she's at. But she's about following the rules, which keeps me in check, right? See, I don't want people to follow me, but I want people to follow Jesus. I want people to say, look, I want to be transformed. I know what my pastor was like, and I know what he's like now. And he's got a long way to go, but he's much better than he was. You see, at this point, we see the greatest intersection that we're going to see in the book of John. Spoiler alert. It's his death and his resurrection. He went to Capernaum, and this became the center of his ministry. It says that they only stayed there a few days. Well, that was Jesus' disciples. But he moved his mother there, and he moved his other family there, and they stayed in Capernaum. That was the center of his ministry. That's going to be important because later on, he talks about how Jesus couldn't even go to his own place because no one believed him because he was Joseph's son. It wasn't God's son, it was Joseph's son. I don't know where you're at today. I don't know what intersection you find yourself in. You may be at a financial intersection, you think. My prayer for you is if you're there, that you see the intersection and see the signs around you that it's not a financial intersection, it's a trust intersection. Maybe it's health. It's trust. Do we really believe what we believe is really real? Do we believe that Jesus came to transform? Because if we did, maybe we would treat our neighbors a little different. Maybe we would treat each other different. Maybe we would treat our spouses different. Because if we knew that Jesus came to transform, then our only one option is not to change that other person, but our only option is to fall to our knees and say, God, transform that other person. Take that water, turn it into wine, overflowing with the joy of Jesus. That's what we need. We don't need no more. We don't need any more laws. We need Jesus. We need Jesus. And in each intersection of life, we have a chance to accept what He's doing. We have a chance to celebrate. Earth and heaven just collided, and God showed up, and it was awesome. People are set free. Bondage of addiction is broken. Healing takes place. The dead are turned alive again. I'm not talking physical, I'm talking spiritual. Well, one day will God raise the dead again? Oh, I bet. I'm counting on it, actually. That'll wake them up. But what I'm saying is, we're all been spiritually dead. So I'm going to do this. I don't know how I was going to close this. But if you were spiritually dead at once in your life, and you say you were spiritually now alive, would you stand? No, I'm not doing this to point anybody out. Okay? If you're sitting down and you didn't get that, you didn't get this, well, I don't know. I want you to know something. Each of these people standing can give you their story. It's a transformation story. It's a story of a death, but a resurrection of walking in newness of life. It's a marriage being put back together. It's a family coming together again. It's a health situation where we're walking in healing. We were so broke we couldn't even buy bread, but now God has provided and we're making it. It could even be, you don't know about the household that I came in. But God has brought people from other families, bloodlines, that have become my family and have made me walk and have shown me what it is to live a resurrected life. My question to you is, why not be transformed? Why not? What do you got to lose? Your pride? What do you got to lose? You don't want to be bound up by more rules. I want you to know when I met Jesus, I became the freest I've ever been. Why? Because the chains of addiction fell off of me. It took work. But now I have the right to say no to the devil instead of saying yes. I don't follow idols anymore. I don't have to. I'm not bound to them anymore.